It's that time of year again, spooky season! Last year on this very day, I uploaded a video called The Media That Brought My Fears to Life, showcasing various little snippets of some things in media that summed up a variety of fears that I have in a very oversharey kind of way. I mean, come on, if somebody wants to trap me in some labyrinthine bunker and is wondering what kind of things to use to shuck my fit up, it was basically a how-to video for dummies. And this year will be no different, because I think horror is one of the most humbling and divisive genres that media can utilize to express the spectrum and variety of emotion that humanity has to offer. What scares you? Why does it scare you? You don't have to tell me, but I encourage you to honestly ask yourself. It's something you may want to find out, just to get to know who the real you is under the mask that you wear in front of others. So while you ghouls and ghosties settle down for a day filled with delightful spooks and devilish encounters, let me regale you with a few pieces of my psyche that were given flesh, almost as if to taunt me specifically. Maybe you haven't heard of these specific things before and you'll want to give them a try, or perhaps you've already come across them and what I'm about to reminisce about will tug at those memories like a withered, naked branch clawing at your clothing as you walk by, back to the forefront. I've always tried to keep my thoughts as concise as possible for brevity's sake, but the human mind is not a concise thing, so there may be some rambling involved. Also, a few warnings. Firstly, if you haven't played or watched any of what I'm about to mention, feel free to skip ahead to a different chapter, as I'll be talking about key plot points you may want to experience firsthand. I'll have a spoiler warning at the beginning of each chapter before covering the subject, so you'll have enough time to plug your ears and skip around. Secondly, jump scares do not scare me. This is not a list of jump scares or anything of the like. This is stuff that genuinely frightened me, so if you're uneasy about whether you should sit through this or not, I recommend watching with a friend or in a nicely lit room. I do need the watch time after all. Love you. Given the nature of the subject matter, I'm not sure this video will even be monetized, so any sort of interaction you could bestow upon the video would be mega appreciated. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this type of content, as I always try to highlight media that I find worth in talking about. So, once again, let's sit back, enjoy something pumpkin flavored, and jump headlong into my own psyche whilst wildly oversharing on the internet and talk about the media that brought my fears to life. Like last time, we'll start with a fairly simple concept, Megalohydrothalassophobia. This is a variation of thalassophobia, which is the common fear of the sea, and honestly, one of the most rational fears anyone can have. Did you know there's a fish that looks exactly like a rock that, when stepped on, kills you within an hour? Yeah. No thank you. The Megalohydro variation of thalassophobia is in reference to the specific fear of large underwater creatures or objects. No, I do not consider myself unique in thinking that the concept of looking down into a pool of water and noticing a shadow that dwarfs the size of my own several times over is a terrifying thought. I do, however, find it odd that despite the fact that the only time I ever actually went to see the ocean was during my formative years when I was just a mindless toddler, I still developed the fear somehow. I wonder if I managed to see something. We're getting to the point of civilization where the only places we've yet to tread are those specifically designed without the human element in mind. The deepest, darkest reaches of space and the ocean seem to be the only recesses of creation not yet known to us, and I'm starkly struck by the idea that perhaps it's best to let sleeping dogs lie. And while space is its own beast, the ocean and its contents have been around for as long as we have. Sure, movies like Lake Placid, The Meg, and Anaconda can do their best to do the bare minimum and take an existing creature and simply click and drag the size bar like we're in Soul Calibur's character creator, but it's the thought of encountering something that massive and realizing that they're looking at you the same way that they look at most things. A morsel, prey, food. Yoshi's Story is a lighthearted game about the Yoshis living in peace and harmony until one day, baby Bowser steals the source of that happiness, the Super Happy Tree, and curses their island to be transformed into a storybook. The Yoshis then set out to bottle up enough determination and happiness to counter the doom and gloom that has been wrought upon their home, and take on the fledgling tyrant in an attempt to return everything to the way that it was. What does their adventure look like? Oh, you know, just a trip through a hellscape, battling multiple undead dragons, dragons and the Michelin Man. There was one level that stood out from the rest though, and that's stage 4-2, Jungle Puddle. Although I wouldn't consider any of what I've just shown a walk in the park, there's just something off about Jungle Puddle. It's almost completely devoid of enemies, save for infinitely spawning eels that are practically a non-issue given Yoshi's bottomless stomach. And then you move to the next screen, and the stage is set. This giant Cheep Cheep will be hassling you for the remainder of the level, and at random intervals shooting its shot and leaping from the water to devour you. If its mouth ever makes contact with your Yoshi, that's it. Game over. We've just found out the hard way that the food chain has one more link above us. There's even a separate Cheep Cheep that attempts to spit water at you to knock you into its domain, where you're defenseless to resist what's about to happen. Iron Lung took the internet by storm not too long ago, but if you're one of the few not aware of what it is, then I have one hell of a premise for you. You're tasked with navigating an ocean of blood on a desolate alien moon in an ancient submarine in search of any sort of resource that may be useful to humanity. You're literally welded into the submarine to prevent the thing from imploding in on itself due to the depth you're investigating at, and your only way of understanding your surroundings is the radar directly in front of you and a single-shot camera you can use to identify exactly where you are in the murky depths. While you explore, you come across various locales that hint at some sort of ecosystem despite their repulsive environment that would seem hostile to all life it comes into contact with. Could something really be alive in a place like this? Much more than that, could it thrive? Survive with no problems? Hunt. Yes, it can! Even with those two examples, I think the one that takes the cake for me is SCP-3000, Anantashesha. Secure, contain, protect. That is the motto of the Foundation, as it locates and either destroys or locks away anomalous and otherwise dangerous creatures and artifacts. From graffiti that hunts and kills you to a stone that swaps your gender instantly, sometimes the word gets out and the Foundation needs to step in and wipe some memories, Men in Black style. This is done with what they refer to as amnestics, and while many may think these are made with common hokey-pokey science mumbo-jumbo, a critical component is actually harvested from a creature that lives at the bottom of the Bay of Bengal in the Indian Ocean. This is Anantashesha, a serpent monster of such unimaginable size and stature that trying to give it more than a passing thought may actually end up getting you killed. Literally. SCP-3000 has mind alteration abilities that let it cause paranoia, fear, memory loss, or in some rare cases, complete alteration of memories in people within its range. And there's a team of people that are required to closely monitor it day in and day out for the safety of humanity. Imagine hearing that one of your friends gets transferred to a facility that has a pile of slime that makes you happy if you touch it, while you get to live on a submarine that's surrounded by the motionless body of a Hindu eel god that's theorized to almost be twice as long as the United Kingdom is wide. Have your memories be fiddled with until you cannot remember what is true and what it isn't, until you inevitably lose all sense of self and are compelled to relinquish your body and are devoured by the darkness that surrounds you. That is Anantashesha, the Mind Serpent. This is the shadow under the water, that which curls and coils around your memories. And this is death. Not the end for humanity, but the end for those unfortunate enough to be noticed in its domain. If there's ever a theme I think goes along this exact fear, it's instant, unavoidable death. The concept of being in a massive creature's territory and being succinctly shown the difference in scale between you and the unknown is a flash of realization only eclipsed in speed by how quickly it can introduce you to oblivion. I do not believe in things like fate or destiny. I believe that everyone has the power, to some extent, to be able to influence what outcomes they will have at different points in their lives. Obviously, this ignores things like the necessity of having a job to provide for one's needs, death, and of course, taxes. There will always be constants in life that one will be subject to, but in the inverse, there are crossroads that we as individuals come to where our input determines where we go. But what if that's not the case? What if the choices before us are an illusion, and all of our suffering and triumphs are all part of a grand design meant to highlight someone or something else? Agoraphobia is described as the fear of not being in control, and while this can often be used to express the fear of being in new and unfamiliar environments, i.e. starting a new job or moving to a new apartment or home, I lean toward the more cosmic side of the notion. What I mean to say is, I fear the idea that although I consciously think that I am in control of what I am doing, there may be a force inside or outside of my knowledge guiding or controlling what I can do or be. Whether that is for my own good or not, I don't really care. I fear that, although I may be able to lift my own arm and clench my fist, that too is an illusion created to pacify and placate my own ambitions. A Wonderful Life was my first entry into the Harvest Moon series, and for all the quirks that the game has, one specific character always stood out to me, even all those years ago when I thought wearing a fedora actually made me look cool. Her name is Lumina, and she was the first character in fiction I actively pitied. Orphaned at a young age, she was adopted by her wealthy grandmother Romana and raised on her wealthy estate. Lumina was taught early on how to play piano by her grandmother and was raised with the expectation that she would grow up to be a world-famous pianist. Romana is excessively hard on her granddaughter, always pushing her to be better and better at something that was probably thought to be a bonding activity between family members. In certain conversations with Lumina, you can tell that a lot of the fun that she had once had with playing the piano is now gone, which is exacerbated by the fact that Lumina actually has a second hobby she holds in just as much regard as piano, that being her passion for painting. But which road does she decide to go down? Is there even a choice? There's not a single thing Lumina would ever have to want for. Her schooling is accounted for, she'll never go hungry, and she lives safely in Forget-Me-Not Valley with every luxury she could ever need. All of this, seemingly, riding on the fact that she will be presenting her family name well by rising to fame through her tirelessly honed skill on the Ivory Keys. Animal Crossing is a game series centered around taking it easy, making friends, and spending your time exhausting the local red snapper population to pay off your mortgage. Well, now you can simply head into the Dodo Airlines airport and head over to a friend's town even if they live states or even continents away. Back then, in population growing, you had to have 2 separate memory cards with 2 separate towns plugged into the same GameCube, and even then, you could only wander through your friend's town alone. This process was connected via the train station that ferried you to and from each nearby village that you visited. Normally, there's nothing nefarious to be gleaned from something this mundane. However, turn off the GameCube while you're out of town, and turn it back on to be greeted with a sight so shocking I bet not a single one of you expected this to actually be a thing in a Nintendo game. If you did not safely come back to your own town, your face is stripped away, leaving behind something very similar to that of the gyroid that sits idly outside of your house. But what are gyroids? Well, they're actually based off of the concept of the haniwa, which are clay figurines that the Japanese used to mark burial sites and protect the dead from evil spirits. Why does this matter? Well, those playing most Animal Crossing games will know that most of the time, the players themselves do all of the work to make the town a better place. Do you ever consider why you're the only human? It's because you're not human. The applications of humanity that have been provided to you, like a face, memories of wanting to start a new life somewhere fresh, belongings, and property, have tricked you into thinking that you have a life here. You don't. Not technically, anyway. You are this town's protector, and its inhabitants are people that have been laid to rest. Your job that you've had since you were placed here is to make that afterlife free from worry or pain. Whether that's something you consider admirable or not is obviously up to you, but for me, I'm always left with the question of, but why did you think that you had to lie to me? Now let's combine these two. Lisa Garland is one of the most enigmatic characters in all of Silent Hill, and for good reason. A girl who once had dreams of becoming an actress who was instead pressured into becoming a nurse by her traditional family. This medical profession of hers would end up getting her intertwined with a ravenous cult that would see her under their control for almost an entire decade. She was forced to become addicted to a drug known as PTV, isolated from her significant other, and tasked with taking care of the withered husk husk of the woman that the group was using to try to birth their god into the mortal world, all the while losing every bit of sanity that would make up your standard human being. When the player character Harry Mason meets her in Silent Hill, she's already dead, having been slain by the guardian angel of the order known as Valtiel. She is unaware of this fact, either by being the manifestation of the psychic girl projecting the hellscape onto Silent Hill, or by being a mere spirit unaware of her own demise due to her mental state after years of abuse. During her time taking refuge in Brookhaven Hospital, she notices the other nurse monsters roaming about, and eventually puts two and two together to understand why she seems unable to leave the hospital. She is fated to be a monster. Due to how she was perceived by the girl she was forced to keep alive, and must now remain forevermore in Silent Hill, forbidden to leave Brookhaven Hospital, eternally bound to the cult she unintentionally began working for, all because she was pressured into becoming a nurse, suffering for a crime that was forced upon her without her consent. Seeing these characters come to terms with the exact situations that they found themselves in is heartbreaking to say the least, and it really makes you wonder if a startling realization just like their own awaits us just around the corner, like waking up from the Matrix to find that you're nothing more than a battery for a much more powerful force. We all spend a great deal of our lives trying to figure out who we are. Sometimes it is easy, and sometimes it is not. Like I've said multiple times in the past, we are all driven by desire, and it's in pursuing that which you hold in such high regard that a fraction of who we are is realized. Along the journey of self-actualization, we are given many opportunities to bear it all plain to see and test our mettle. Whether that's simply a test of character or ability, it matters not. These tests serve as markers for understanding how far we've come, or how far still we have to go. But if we can spend a lifetime simply trying to figure out who we are, where are the other lifetimes meant to understand others and the effects we have on them? What if the world we come to know is not the same one that everyone else lives in? What if along the way, we find that we simply don't care? Autoteraphobia is a word I admittedly created for this video after my research for an existing word came up short. It's crafted from the combination of autophobia, which is the fear of being by oneself, and teraphobia, which is the fear of monsters. I describe autoteraphobia as the fear of realizing or perceiving oneself as a monster. Undertale is a fantastic game, with a bevy of different sights to see, conversations to be had, and, most importantly, choices to be made. If you're one of the many people that immerse themselves into the game like any standard RPG, simply battling any and all creatures that come your way, then you've unwittingly taken part in one of the most disgusting things someone can do, caterwauling through life, amassing resources and power, while others are forced to foot the bill, whilst remaining blissfully ignorant of the carnage you're wreaking. That moniker at the bottom of your screen is not your standard role-playing game measure of strength, since it does not translate to level. It, in reality, is a gauge of your level of violence toward the denizens of the underground. And I'm not gonna sit here and chastise anyone for being startled and defending themselves against literally, actually hostile creatures that put themselves into the line of fire by challenging you to a fight. The amount of fucking around someone does is usually equal to or proportional to the amount of finding out that occurs. The idea of playing God is not one discovered by or limited to Undertale, but I think it's very well explored in the genocide route of the game. Rather than the plot twist of being told that your LV was your level of violence the whole time, and having to bear the thought that maybe that frog you killed all the way at the beginning of the game could inflict next to no actual harm to you, instead the route can begin with some simple nefarious curiosity. Curiosity about what would happen if you killed everyone, because you simply have to know what happens if you do. It's just a video game, after all. And that's the whole point of the route. You watch as characters come to realize that you're a dangerous person. You cut down everyone in your path, even going so far as to having to track down any remaining stragglers in each area to net that precious genocide route progression. You watch as characters much weaker than you desperately try to hold you off, going through inspirational character moments to search for every last vestige of strength to aid them in their fight to save the world that they know and hold dear. Character moments that mirror the ones you go through if you're going for much more nobler routes. But of course, everyone falls before you, because it's just a video game and you can infinitely reset the universe until you get the outcome that you desire. And when all is said and done, you have complete control over reality. Until at the very end of it all, you're ready to call it quits and go back to how things used to be. But that's not possible anymore, and the game laughs at you for it. It is all gone. They are all dead, and it's going to stay that way because that's what you wanted. You are a monster, and you are disgusting. Doki Doki Literature Club sees you, a single and ready-to-mingle, semi-boring yet ever-fascinating high schooler, join your school's literature club at the behest of your best friend Sayori. Within the club are 3 other girls: Yuri, the shy bookworm, Natsuki, the bratty loudmouth, and Monika, the student council vice president. For those more familiar with standard dating simulation tropes, all of these girls fulfill a generic character cliché template. This is done because at its core, Doki Doki Literature Club is supposed to be a dating sim. You join the literature club, pick whichever of the 3 girls suit your interests based off of exhausted, shallow, easily identifiable traits, and follow them down their route until you inevitably get whatever payoff the game has in store for you two. There is one small hang-up though, as I'm sure you've noticed. I said 3 girls and not 4, since there is no actual route set aside for the president of the literature club, Monika. This hang-up is perpetuated by the fact that, at some point in the possibly hundreds, if not thousands of playthroughs that have been done on this game, Monika became sentient. And not one to sit idly by and watch her friends enjoy the intimacy of your company a second longer without getting her own slice of the pie, Monika sets out trying to create her own ending. But the world that she lives in was not designed to allow that to happen, and all of the girls end up butting in for your undivided attention despite Monika's best efforts. So, Monika uses her now limitless power within the confines of the game to do the unthinkable, and she begins harming her own friends. If she cannot have you because they are in the way as options, then she will remove them from the option pool. At the end, she gets what she always wanted, your complete undivided attention, even if you consider her a monster for doing what she did. The regret only comes from you calling her out with a dose of her own medicine, and she realizes that she has gone too far, making right her misdeeds by removing the entire game from existence. Braid is a puzzle game that set the world on fire many years ago, about perception, ambition, and the finality that decisions can have. You play as Tim, a man with the ability to reverse time, on a quest to rescue a princess from, as he puts it, a horrible and evil monster. He also mentioned that the reason that he and the princess aren't together right now is because of a mistake he made in the past, one he wishes he could remedy or act as though it had never happened in the first place. For anyone wondering, the princess is not an actual person, and what thing occupies the princess role for Tim changes across the story. In the beginning, it's obvious that the princess is a woman that he considered his soulmate, yet as you advance through the story, it's clear something more world-changing has settled within the title. This is compounded by the fact that you do not get the whole story right from the get-go, the game starting you out in the second world of the game instead of the first, robbing you of context. To grossly simplify a wildly complex story, you need to play the game in reverse, as Tim's ability to reverse time is less of a real-world superpower and more so an analogy for Tim's regrets and wishing he could simply go back to the way things were before he realized exactly what he has become. When you finally get to the first level of the game, which is actually the last, you perceive a knight, the horrible evil monster attempting to kidnap the princess, as you and the princess work together to escape a blazing inferno sent by the monster monster, you finally make it back to her proverbial castle where she is safe and sound, and the two of you can finally be together, only to be taken aback as you play the order of events in the correct order, realizing that the princess was not working alongside you. She was working against you. Tim was not the protagonist of the story. He is the antagonist. The entire game being an exercise in creating increasingly difficult and abstract problems that would dissuade most from continuing onward due to the madness of what you're actually trying to accomplish. By 100%ing the game, you commit the cardinal sin that the game is trying to warn you of: obsession, compulsion, consumption. Triumph at making your mark on the world, but at the cost of making your mark on the world. When it's revealed that the princess at the end of the story is actually the creation of the nuclear bomb. There is nothing wrong with desire, but in the pursuit of it, it's important to not lose sight of what makes us human. Some things are better off never being obtained, some questions are better off never being asked, and some sights are better off never being seen. While anything in this world is possible, the methods to make those things possible can be an ungodly nightmare to bring to fruition, especially to those around us. A quote brought up in Braid is one by Kenneth Bainbridge during the Manhattan Project's Trinity nuclear test, and I think it summarizes the feeling of finally getting that which you've been working towards so tirelessly, only to realize the damage that's been done in retrospect. Directly after the first detonation of a nuclear bomb on planet Earth, Kenneth looked to his colleague and said, "Now we're all sons of bitches." The more I grow up, the more I realize that I am no longer the main demographic of things that I used to be. The inside jokes that I thought made me and my friends unique from the adults of my era are now dated and unknown to the generation following me. The idea from the shows and games that I grew up with that the world is my oyster has now come into conflict with the experience I've gained from being an adult. The minute amount of relevance that I've had online from the extensive amount of mental energy and effort I've poured into it is eclipsed by thousands upon thousands of others that have found better ways to work the system. At any point, I could be overlooked or invalidated by someone doing my job better than me. What I mean to say is, I fear being forgotten or replaced. Regirock, Regice, and Registeel are the original trio of Golem Pokemon created by the continent-moving craftsman deity Pokemon Regigigas by breathing life into nearby elements and molding them into its own image. Long before the maps of the world were surveyed, Regirock was crafted from the clay of the earth, able to fill any chips it receives on its body with nearby stone, adding to its body with an infinite supply of mass. Regice was crafted from a massive glacier, with a cloak of frigid air so cold that submerging its body in boiling magma yields no effect. Registeel was crafted from magma, tempered beneath the mantle of the planet with a malleable body, unable to be scratched or dented in any way. These Pokemon have survived thousands of years under the harshest of conditions, created as the living embodiment of longevity and strength. So when in Pokemon Clover, you can encounter them in this state, you can't help but shudder at what sort of circumstances befell them to have those unquestionable constants turned on their head. An artist on DeviantArt even went so far as to animate them in such a terrifying way, as they constantly try to return the state they used to know, only to fall flat on their face. A few fan theories have even come forward, surmising that given that multiple dimensions of Pokemon exist, there's a possibility that these collapsing Regigolems before us were simply the prototypes before the perfected versions that we know today were created, unaffected by time. But knowing that you were left behind because a newer, better version of yourself exists is a terror I cannot even fathom. But what if it wasn't a better version of yourself leaving you behind? What if everything that made you, you was taken right before your eyes? What if the idea of you wasn't something you had control of any longer? The witch's house sees Viola, a young girl prevented from escaping the forest she's in by a nefarious witch who forces her to traverse through her perilous mansion so that the two can come face to face. Along the way, you come across diaries that detail the sordid upbringing that Ellen the witch was subject to, how she murdered her parents, and how she's currently on her deathbed awaiting your arrival. When you show up in her chambers and read the final diary entry, it's clear that instead of wanting you dead, she wants to use her sorcery to swap bodies with you and escape the vile state that she's currently in. After a brief chase beyond the rose wall that initially blocked your exit, the witch pathetically attempts to prevent Viola's escape, where it's revealed that the body swap has actually already occurred. The witch's feeble attempts to stop Viola from departing were not because her free ride was leaving. It was actually Viola herself desperately trying to reclaim her body and reeling from the sheer state that Ellen's own body has been left in. Just as it seems as though it can't get any worse, Viola's father shows up, mistaking the pile of gore in front of him for a monster. And of course, seeing what he thinks is his daughter before him in danger, instead unwittingly kills her, leaving her to collapse in a heap on the forest floor. Ellen gets to go home safe and sound, with a healthy body, a loving family, and the payment that was due for her terrifying powers paid for by someone that was only trying to help out a friend. But let's take it one existential step further to finish things off. What you see in front of you right now is you. Or rather, it's the character that you played as, Simon Jarrett, after he had his consciousness copy and pasted into a new body so that he and his companion could delve further into this underwater facility. Soma is a complicated game. The older Simon Jarrett before you is nothing but an AI birthed from a brain scan, uploaded into a half-robot, half-corpse amalgamation that is as human as the metal floor beneath your feet. But you just played as Simon Jarrett. You've felt his confusion, listened to him try to relate to the people around him, and felt his outrage at the current state of the world. God damn it, you're still Simon Jarrett! Sure, the real flesh and blood Simon died almost a century ago, but does that matter when you can remember the same memories that he does, feel the same feelings, have the same regrets? But if you're Simon Jarrett, what does that make the thing in front of you then? Like I said, you were just a few seconds ago sitting in this seat, hopeful at preserving the last of humanity's memory by ejecting a simulated reality known as the Ark deep into space for it can last for who knows how long. But now you've got a choice before you. Allow this creature to wake up, companionless and without any context for why he's been left behind, to waste away in this dilapidated facility for eons, unsure of what to do or who's even around to keep them company. Or shut them down by draining their battery. This is not death in the colloquial sense, but for all intents and purposes, it might as well be. If you press the button to initiate the process, you will be leaving yourself behind and watching yourself die. The worst part about all of this is the false idea that since you're the one looking at the unconscious zombie robot man from the standing position, that you are the one that gets to make the final decision. At the end of the game, you are given one final opportunity to put you and your companion's consciousness into the Ark, just as you were about to launch the last vestiges of humanity into the infinite expanse of space. The upload completes, and you rejoice at your victory, knowing that although the land above you may be a smoldering inferno, the Eden within the Ark is a safe haven free from stress or worry. But you are still sitting in the command chair at the deepest depths of the sea imaginable, surrounded by nothing but despair and destruction. Your companion asks you why you aren't happy that you made it. You respond that you didn't make it. Some other version that's not you did. You two bicker as the facility shuts down, the last remnant of power having been used to power the space cannon. With one final click, your companion device shuts down, leaving you to remain seated. There is nothing left but you at the end of all things, to wait for a death that could take ages, unable to relate to anything or be emboldened by camaraderie. The darkness swallows you whole as you leave yourself behind. I suppose in the grand scheme of things, being forgotten is inevitable. That's just the nature of existence. Time marches on. Lex Luthor once said, The truth is, for all my struggles to make my mark in life, for all I've accomplished, in just a few short generations, my name will be forgotten. Even the great of us can't compete with time and death. One day, that which I fear will come to pass. I can take some solace in the fact that I may never be conscious to even realize that it has happened, but even growing old and becoming someone that others think twice about before associating with simply because I'm no longer in my prime scratches the surface of that fearful itch just enough to keep me up at night. Just as the breeze can caress my skin today, tomorrow it may blow elsewhere with no memory that we even met. And that's it. I can't imagine I'd do another one of these videos again, since I feel like I've exhausted the easily identifiable fears I've noticed in media over the years. Also, I really challenged myself to get this video done over the course of the entire month of October, but it ended up being done over the course of about 2 weeks. Because I'm really lazy, and I'm really pushing myself to get it done on time. If I manage to get it done, say hi, me! I hate you so much. If you feel as though any game I talked about in this monstrosity of a video warrants its own standalone video, let me know in the comments below. I've been really enjoying content creation as of late, so any video recommendations you guys may have would be very welcome. I have a Patreon if you'd like to go that far in supporting me, since I'd really love to do this gig full time, but can't do so until I make enough from it to pay the bills. By becoming a Sassy Patron, you get a small myriad of perks, including, but not limited to, having your name at the end of each video, much like these wonderfully amazing people right here. A huge thank you to Michaela Savage, ATK4May, Gideon King, Chris Schmidt, and Will Oldham for believing in me and my work. You guys keep me motivated and emboldened to push my boundaries like no one's business. If you can't spare any change, no problem at all. You can always help out in other ways, such as leaving a like or comment on this video to get it pushed into YouTube's algorithm. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Stay safe today, guys, and have a very happy Halloween. See you guys next time.